This is Food for Thought with Deborah Walker. Today I have with me Noel Nile from Vitality Distribution. He's going to talk to me about Rife technology, something that a lot of people read on the internet but aren't really told a huge amount about. So, hi Noel, how are you today?
Very well. Nice to talk to you, Deborah.
So just give my audience some background about yourself first and foremost, and how you ended up distributing what I use, which is the Ultra BCX, which is how I actually met you, which is fundamentally Rife technology. And you also deal with other alternative health equipment. So do just give my audience a little bit of background about yourself.
Well, I came into sort of natural health as long ago as the 70s, and that's when I came into it via whole foods and then vitamins and minerals. And then I was hired to create formulas, within the supplement industry. And so that was both here and abroad. So I built up, because I've more or less got in on the ground floor, I know a lot of people in different territories. And I was initially approached at, I think when about 2004, 2005 to take over the distribution of Biomeridian, which is one of the EAV testing machines. That's electroacupuncture according to Vol. I'm now looking at a couple of others in that arena. And then in California, quite a few years back now, I met Roger Whitman, who's the owner of the BCX Ultra, which is more or less the Rolls-Royce of Rife machines. And we got on very well, and in fairly short order he offered me sort of Europe for that as well. So that's basically how I got involved, I think, just from being around so long and getting in the way.
And you do have an amazing knowledge, I have to say. It's not just on these machines. I know when we have conversations, they roam absolutely across the whole arena of alternative health. You're incredibly knowledgeable.
Well, thank you very much. I think some of that obviously has been a sort of there's been a period of there's been osmosis from other people. I've been lucky enough to meet some very clever people over the years, and I've tried to remember what they told me.
That old osmosis effect.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, can you give us a history lesson on Royal Rife? Because it's fair to say that Rife practically developed bioelectric medicine himself, really, didn't he?
Yes, he did. I mean, Royal Rife was a genuine scientist. Sometimes when you see some of these products, they say, developed by science or NASA and things like that, and you look a little bit deeper and you find out that's not quite the case. Royal Rife was, a fully qualified scientist, and his speciality at the time was developing a microscope, and this is in the early 1920s, that could accurately observe viruses and bacteria. At that time, the medical field knew about viruses and bacteria, obviously, because you'd had penicillin and things like that developed prior to that. But they couldn't observe them accurately because the magnification wasn't there. So he developed the first microscope, great big thing with mirrors and all sorts of things. It looked like something out of Chitty Chitty Bang Bang rather than a scientific thing, but he developed that, and in fact, the Rife number 3, even though he was American, is in the Science Museum in South Kensington. So once he had that, he then decided, he'd observed opera singers, that old trick of an opera singer shattering a wine glass because of a certain vibration. And so he started putting various viruses and bacteria on plates under this microscope he developed, and experimenting with different frequencies to see if the pathogen walls could shatter. And he spent thousands and thousands of hours doing this. And although he eventually developed frequency combinations for lots of bacteria, primarily, and some viruses, he made his name because he started handling cancer with it. He found that just generating the frequency wasn't enough because the waveforms of frequencies can vary. Some can be square, some can be very sawtooth or whatever. And so the machine he developed used radio waves as well as normal frequencies. So the same frequency was generated again, but in radio wave format, and what that meant was that it permeated the cells, a lot easier. But he was hailed as a genius. There was talk about the Nobel Prize, etc. But the forerunner to the FDA, the AMA, there was a huge attack on him and all the doctors that were using the thing, and a couple of people got put in jail because he was getting such a phenomenal success with, handling cancer. And then he reopened again in San Diego, and again phenomenal success rate, and they shut him down again, and he sort of faded more or less into obscurity. But the technology has lived on, and other people have, over that period of time, have added to the options for frequencies.
And you say the technology's lived on, but his other work's lived on as well, hasn't it? Because it actually covers aviation, electronics, the optics, as you've talked about with the microscopes, ballistics even, doesn't it? His work is, he wasn't a lightweight in regards to science.
No, he wasn't. He was an innovator as well. He wasn't the sort of guy that learned something and then just stuck with it. He's always trying to work out ways to do things better. And it's just a phenomenal ability to observe and extrapolate and then move things on. I mean, he moved things on in a lot of different scientific fields. They say one day history will be rewritten. I think when it is, I think Royal Rife will figure probably with a much higher profile than he currently has.
Well, he's been very sidelined, considering my understanding from the research is that he actually he was awarded 14 major awards and honours, and actually given an honorary doctorate at the University of Heidelberg for his work.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
and he worked for Zeiss, didn't he? He worked for Zeiss Optics and the US government, so he was a significant scientist for his time, and it's only in many respects the Rife technology of the frequency work that has sent him into the other arena where he's not considered anymore, isn't it?
That's right. I mean, and it's good that you mentioned those other arenas in which he operated, because it validates even more the expertise of the man, because in those other arenas he wasn't banging up against vested interest. Obviously, with the Rife machine, he most certainly was, and so it kind of gives even more validation to his discoveries, I think, because if he had that much respect and credibility in other arenas, why would he be shut down on the one that he probably put the most energy into?
Yeah, and you talk about his the cancer work. I understand there was research done with the University of Southern California back in 1934, and they actually they watched him with his work, didn't they, for 90 days, where he gave 90 days worth of treatment to people and to their patients, and in effect they had a team who monitored it for that whole period of time. My understanding is that over 80% of those people actually lived beyond that period of time, and if they weren't showing improvement, they just changed the frequencies they were using, and then they achieved a much higher rate again.
Yeah, but that's right. I mean, the machine he had for that particular experiment looked like something out of Outer Limits. It was a great big thing with bubbles coming out of it and all sort of things. But that is true. And at San Diego, he was hitting about, I think, just under 90%. Success. Phenomenal. Incidentally, when he had the San Diego one, there was a woman there working with him who developed it was an injection of a compound of sulfur, and she was getting she wasn't getting the same results as Royal Rife was, but she was getting around 60% success rate with that as well. They shut her down, and that's been taken off the market ever since as well. That's never been available, that particular compound of sulfur. So, but yes, they did do that experiment, and he was, as I say, San Diego was really where his final clinic was, and then he'd been buffeted around to such a degree that he sort of faded into obscurity after that.
Yeah, because he was continually raided by the police, my understanding is, and they confiscated years of his research, didn't they, in the end?
They did, yes. I mean, somebody got together with him again in the 1950s when he was relatively quite a bit older then, and tried to sort of revivify the whole thing. And they did do some other work, but it was always going to be slightly covert because of the resistance to it.
Yeah. So there are frequencies. Do they cover everything? Can you cover off what types of things you can actually deal with this with the Rife machines?
Yeah, I mean the frequent. It's a very broad palette that you have with the Rife. It doesn't handle everything, and it doesn't, as you know, as a practitioner, it doesn't supplant the practitioner's own knowledge or expertise, because there are times when you use the machine and there's times when you don't use the machine. But it built its name primarily for resistant microbacteria. So obviously it got a high profile because of his work on cancer. But really, these days, some of the nanobacteria are so resistant to any of the regimes, be they natural or not. And somehow or other, the frequencies in the Rife eventually break down and eradicate these from the body. The most high profile at the moment obviously would be Lyme's, but we're being inundated at the moment, as you can imagine, with requests about Ebola. And there is one set of Ebola frequencies, which there's a particular lady that provides frequencies to all those clinics in northern Mexico, and she has the Ebola frequencies. I think you've got to buy them off her, but she's got a long pedigree in this field. So that's some of the things you can do. But I mean, in other ways, you can. One of the things that a lot of people like osteopaths, etc., chiropractors in particular, use it for is non-union breaks. They'll use the rods around the area of a non-union break, and they found that it speeds up the healing process. So it covers a very broad area. Things like hepatitis, even diabetes. We had a miracle of a diabetes patient about 2 years ago, and it was made all the more credible by the fact the guy was a doctor, so it wasn't sort of a psychological thing. It generally did handle it. So sometimes you get miracles, and as a practitioner, you'll know sometimes you don't, because no two physiologies are the same. But primarily nanobacteria, germs, viruses, those are the key, and parasites, of course. Parasites, it's very effective. Those are the key areas you would use it for.
So, are there times when very specifically you would use it, and then times when you wouldn't? You definitely wouldn't use it.
Yes, I think so. I think one of the things about Rife treatment is that you are killing off cells, not healthy cells, but you think, because it's very accurate of its targeting, but you are killing off cells. So the liver and the kidneys obviously have to deal with that. If you had a patient that just was in a really bad shape, where the organ function was already showing, after you'd screened them as being well below par, and you suspected parasites and possibly a few other things in the upper intestinal tract, you might, instead of using the Rife machine, you might prescribe something like wormwood or cloves or something like that, or black walnut, to deal with that particular problem, because you were apprehensive about, at that point in time, the patient's body being able to, to cope with the what's called the Herxheimer's, the cell die-off the following day. So in examples like that, you would tread cautiously.
So just go into Herxheimer in more detail for the part of my audience who don't know anything about that.
Okay, so Herxheimer's, I think there was another guy that claims to have developed the same theory at the same time. So I've forgotten his name. So it's called Herxheimer and then something else, the other doctor. But it's basically it was observed by a doctor called, strangely enough, Herxheimer, who observed that people could get flu-like systems 24 hours after cells had been, pathogen cells had been got rid of. I don't think he observed it with Rife. I think he was doing something else when he observed that. And he took precautionary measures as a result of that. That you have to drink a lot of fluid and that sort of thing. I mean, it normally passes in under 24 hours, but that's what he observed. That the cell die-off causes a reaction because the liver gets slightly overworked, not totally overworked, and there's a reaction within the body, and he observed that reaction because it was being falsely diagnosed before as something else, etc. And he said it's a transitory thing as the body rids itself of toxins, and that's how it was named Herxheimer's, because he proved that theory to be right.
And this is why, for me, timing absolutely matters. So often I'll have people who just want to have Rife treatment, and actually I will say no until I've enabled the cleansing and the elimination channels to be opened in the body. Otherwise, it will overwhelm the individual. Exactly. Yes. No, well, I know you're very good in that arena, but yes, people do need to be told that. What you can sometimes get is patients demanding you increase the voltage, etc. It almost becomes like a machismo thing, no, put it up, and I want it, and then they for about 2 days they're knocked out, basically. Basically, if you're a patient, you should listen to the practitioner. A few of my male clients who feel it's just about it's almost a bit like a race. Let's go as hard as we can to the finish, and it's like no.
Exactly. Yeah. You do get that. I mean, I can understand it, but I mean, it's because they don't have the altitude of viewpoint.
Yeah.
They don't understand the synergy that's going on in the cellular milieu, basically.
Yeah, it's not always about the end point. I learned a few years ago from someone, it's a marathon, not a sprint, with health, definitely, and particularly with the Rife, I feel, because it can be quite overwhelming. So now you said at the beginning that the Ultra BCX is the Rolls Royce of Rife machines. Explain why, because I know lots of my clients turn up with other types of Rife machines, and also ones frequencies that are on their PCs and things like this, and not getting the results in the same way. So can you just go into why the Ultra BCX is different, and these other types of machines that they might come across?
Yes, I mean, I'm not trying to invalidate all the different other companies out there, but I mean, there were specific protocols that Royal Rife set down, and not the least of these being, the use of radio waves. So, which is very important. So, a machine that is generating frequencies, and you're just holding the electrodes, or has already cut out that protocol of radio waves. It's just frequencies. So the BCX, first of all, you have 2 cathode ray tubes, and I think people listening will remember cathode ray tubes from those old TV sets we used to have. So you have the cathode ray tubes with a radon gas inside them, and they're great conductors for the frequency in radio wave form. And then you have your feet on foot plates. Normally, that's normally the way most practitioners use the BCX, and that gives you the full range of frequencies. But the cathode ray tubes, good though they are, they don't cover the full spectrum. So on some things you'll get away with it, but on other things you wouldn't get the full spectrum, which is why you have the foot plates as well. The board on the BCX Ultra is mega, sort of. It's really a powerful board. It's got a sweep that no other machine remotely, I forget what it goes up. There's something like 4G it goes up. It's got a phenomenal sweep. I don't want to get too technical here, but if you wanted to sweep through every single frequency, the spectrum you get from that particular board is just it's phenomenal. So, and the machine also gives you options for plugging in sticky pads. Say, for instance, the patient had breast cancer, you put one on the front mastoid and then something on the back, so you're hitting it from either side, as well as brass electrodes, which, let's say you had a liver condition, you could get surgical tape and tape one to the front of the liver and one at the back on the other, the opposite side. It gives you those options. But the thing about it, the presets on it, it has all the original Rife protocols. It has all the custom protocols, including the famous Russian healing frequency. And you can bypass anything and create your own as well. But if I was to answer your question in one sentence, it's the power of the board versus the standardness of the delivery. You've got a very, very powerful board, and then you've got a medium for radio waves, a medium for normal frequencies, and that's what makes it stand out.
I have to say it is phenomenal. I know I'm just going to talk about my own experiences rather than those of my clients. Within the family, we've had things like cold sores, and sometimes listen to the body with when you're on it. Often it can be a second of treatment. It doesn't have to be the whole set of frequencies. Sometimes it can do it. So it really very, very quickly knock it out. The next day you haven't got. I know things like I haven't had cold sores or candida and things like that. It's just absolutely wiped it out very, very quickly. Absolutely phenomenal piece of kit, I have to say that, and I love it. I really do like it. But as I said, you have to make sure your body's ready. Go on.
It's well, and as you say, very often it doesn't require a long series of visits or treatments. I mean, that particular doctor, that we hit that the first time on that. I'm not saying we're going to get out of every diabetes type 2, but by any means. But on that particular guy, it banged, and we had another one, a very eminent doctor. He's not a doctor; he's a professor, but he was a professor of medicine at Cairo University. He was visiting Harley Street. And quite a few years back, he had a blood transfusion, and it was a dodgy blood transfusion. Basically, there was hepatitis in it. So he's been on dialysis ever since. Very, very bright guy, a brilliant man actually. And I think we gave him 5 treatments on it to handle it. It disappeared, and then he went back. So he had blood tests in Harley Street. It disappeared, and he went back. It reappeared. And then we did some research about a particular parasite, which is in the liver, and somehow or other stores that particular virus as well. So it came back again, and we hit it, I think, 3 times on this setting for the parasite. And now he's, the blood tests are fine. I mean, he still has to have the dialysis because of the damage done, but, the actual hepatitis tests are all positive.
Parasites in particular are really interesting to use it with, as are the healing frequencies. You've talked about, it's not just about frequencies to actually kill things off, but actually there are healing frequencies. You talked about the Russian protocols and things.
Yes, that's right. Yes, I mean, we shouldn't sort of pigeonhole it entirely for pathogens. We already mentioned the one about the non-union breaks. Yes, it can be used to revivify the 594 preset, because it's lots of presets on the BCX. The 594 is the one for the immune system, and everybody you see when they come off that, the blood's come back into their face. It's quite funny, actually.
Now, what I find interesting about the BCX is that I can set it off in a room. So if I think I've got mites in a room, or I've got a client who's affected by mites, not only can I do protocols to actually resolve that with them in other ways, but also I can put the Rife on I call it the Rife, so the Ultra BCX on in the room, and to actually kill off the mites that might be in the upholstery and things like this.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely true. And there's another device you can plug into it called actually it works independently. It's called the double bubble. But it's the same. It's a Rife machine, but with a generating big sort of glass bubble area, which again, yes, and you can do that. Yes, and of course there's the famous story about Rife when someone accidentally left on that massive machine in the lab when they went home one night, and they came in and thousands of dollars worth of sort of viruses and bacteria in glass tubes had been wiped out, and they came back. Which for some people would be a good. I mean, it wasn't very good at all for him, so he had to start over again, and then he had to get a different lab where the room was absolutely protected from that massive Rife machine. So, yeah. Well, I think that story you told's got a lot of credibility.
Well, I actually had an office, not until recently, I have to say, next to some architects, and one of them had a very bad cold and a very bad virus for weeks and weeks on end, and all I could hear was him coughing and coughing and coughing through the wall. And then one day I just decided, actually, I was going out for 2 hours, I was just going to set the Rife off on the helium frequency. I literally left it up against the wall for the day.
That's clever.
And strangely enough, within a few days, he was feeling much, much better. And I have no idea whether it was because of that or whether it's just my pure intention that he was going to get better.
Wow, it could have been a combination of both. Great idea, though. There's certainly, as I say, there's a lot of validity in that when you think of that Rife story. So it's quite possible.
Now, Noel, you distribute other pieces of kit which are to do with the Meridian systems. Do you want to just elaborate on those a little bit more so that people actually know what other things you distribute?
Yes, we EAV is basically electroacupuncture according to Voll. Dr. Voll was a German doctor. I think he only recently died. He lived a long time, Dr. Voll. Very recently died. Essentially, he wanted to prove that the meridian lines used by acupuncturists actually existed. He wanted to prove it to the German medical community because they were all fairly sceptical. And he demonstrated by someone holding an electrode and him putting a probe on a particular acupoint that if it was on the point, the resistance was extremely low, and if you move it even a quarter of an inch either way, it shot up to about 200 ohms. And he showed this on a screen, and from doing that and putting it on other different points, he demonstrated that these meridian lines actually exist. And from that, machines have evolved, and now you have machines where the software, you've got about 14,000 different things you can test for, as well as the sort of normal organic things you can test for, everything from germ warfare to sort of common cold. That's what the machines do. I'm moving across now to a machine called the Avatar because it's slightly better than the Biomeridian, in my opinion. But Biomeridian are still very good machines. But what they give the practitioner or some public buy them as well is you can test for anything. So I know you've got the Asira, which is EAV as well. So basically, an assessment is done along the meridian lines, and a profile is presented to the practitioner, and then you get an overview of their physical condition, and then you can go deeper if you want to go deeper. You've got all these other options. For instance, if it was a pancreas, you can hit the bar and the bar on your keyboard, and it'll literally give you branch points, and you could find out if it was the islets of Lagan or whatever that's wrong, and adjust it, or whether it's just digestive enzymes, etc., etc. So a phenomenal piece of screening equipment. And when you think the amount of money a screening device in a hospital costs, which is well over £1 million, in various tests, the Biomeridian has stood up very well to these types of machines. So that's basically what they do.
Fantastic. And you also sell a wonderful electrolyte mixture, which I use with my clients, called Free Lights, don't you?
Yeah. I'm very proud of Free Lights because it took me. It's one of those evangelical things. I wasn't happy with the electrolytes out there. Now, as I said to you last time we met, I'm now working on one for liver detox, which is probably going to take about the same amount of time, about 3 years before I bring it out. But yes, it's. I just wasn't particularly happy on the electrolyte products out there, and this one offers all 6 key electrolytes plus the 74 trace minerals and in a very pure form. And we've absolutely had no negative. I mean, everybody that's bought this, including yourself, we've had nothing but great testimonials. That's called Free Lights as a website thing on freelights.com. But yes, I'm quite proud of Free Lights, and it's still early days yet. We haven't taken it to America yet or whatever. But everybody at any given point in time, in varying degrees, suffers from dehydration, and that in turn affects the way the central nervous system operates. Because, as you know, Debbie, you need electrolytes to jump those neuron gaps, and that's why you feel tired when you're dehydrated. So it can make a tremendous difference. And also, if you had a client on a protocol, giving them Free Lights can sometimes expedite the recovery curve, because just for that very reason, the absorption becomes better. I know you know this, and we had this from the Celestine Clinic down in Kent there, and a few other ones, one in Harley Street as well. So and it's not rocket science. It's just one of those things. Well, why didn't anybody do that before? If you know what I mean. I haven't done anything groundbreaking or anything like that. It's not like the Rife machine, but it just works. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lovely supplement, to be honest, and I use it. I personally use it, I have to say, most days, and particularly now I'm training again. Now, Noel, how do people get in contact with you to find out about all these lovely machines and to purchase your Free Lights?
Sure. Okay. Well, first of all, they want to find out a little bit more about Rife, which I know you and I are quite keen on, zealots on. They can actually go to the website, which is http:// or just put in vitality-distribution.com. So vitality-distribution.com. If they want to contact us on that, they just go info and email it to info@vitality-distribution.com, or they can ring. Probably best to go through to the mobile rather than a landline number, because we're always out and about doing things. So it's 07737 684 541. And if they want to have a look at Free Lights, see what that's all about. We didn't even talk about the ingredients, but because it's got Himalayan salt in it, it's got fulvic acid, organic fulvic acid from New Mexico, plus all the electrolytes. That's at www.freelights.com. That's basically it, Debbie.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining me today on Food for Thought.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk to you. You're a great practitioner as well, if anyone's listening.
Fantastic testimonial at the end. And I didn't have to pay him for it.